right, guys, welcome back to our next episode of Meet the Candidate. I am your host, Jared Moore, and we will be taking questions from the chat. Tonight's candidate is Robyn Whitecloud. She is a candidate for the Okmulgee District National Council seat. And Ms. Whitecloud, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for inviting me.
I guess to start off with, while we're waiting on people to put their questions in the chat, tell us about yourself and why you're running in this race.
Okay. Well, I'm from Okmulgee. I've lived all but about 5 years of my life in Okmulgee County. I worked for the Mvskoke Creek Nation for about 19 years, with my latest position working for the National Council as their finance officer. My background is in accounting. I'm an accountant, and I hold myself accountable and transparent in all areas of my life, and I would hold my fellow council members accountable as well. I'm well acquainted with the tribe and familiar with the legal processes as far as council goes. And I just feel like we need new ideas, fresh ideas, new people on the council. And so that's why I'm running. I feel like it's more of a calling for me.
Okay. You say we need new ideas, fresh ideas. Do you have some of those ideas you could share, legislation that you're going to bring in if elected?
Well, I want to bring positive change. I want to try to meet the unmet needs of people that fall in between the gaps. I've been talking to citizens, and there are some grandparents that are raising their grandchildren, and they can't get housing or the elderly housing because you can't have someone living with you. So citizens like that, and then they could get, apply for a house, but there's no telling what year, they can get a house. And then if they get the rental assistance, they still have to have affordable housing because they have to make up the difference of what the tribe doesn't help them with. So I feel like that's a gap. And then of course there's always gaps in healthcare. That is a horse of a different color, but I would advocate for quality care, quality contact. Myself as a citizen is very frustrating when you can't talk to a real person or you leave a message and you can't get a call back. So things like that, I would advocate for the citizens.
Okay. And I want to remind everybody, if you want to put your questions in the chat, we can ask them. On the housing situation, specifically the elderly housing situation you were talking about, what legislatively would you propose as a solution to that?
Well, I would research and try to work with my fellow council members to see if there's ways that we could secure some kind of funding, even if it's tribal. I know that when we get into federal funding sources, there's all kinds of federal regulations that we have to abide by. So being a sovereign nation, I feel like we should be able to make our own guidelines and our own regulations to help more of our people, find more ways to help people and not, hinder or, sometimes I feel like we have ways to not help our people. Mm-hmm. So I want to find positive ways to help.
Okay, we've had a question pop up here, and I'm going to ask Creek Pride 23. I'm going to go ahead and ask the question, but if you could clarify what you mean by a constitutional agency, if you could, Creek Pride, in the chat there, but I'm going to go ahead and ask the question. Creek Pride 23 asks, who is the convening authority to call for a constitutional convention? Would you support a constitutional agency for the MCN Media Department?
Okay, can you repeat that?
Well, I'll just give it to you in two parts. Who is the convening authority to call for a constitutional convention?
I'm not well versed on that. I know we had one back in 2008, and I'd have to research that.
Okay. And then would you support a constitutional agency for the MCN Media Department?
I really don't understand that question.
Oh, all right. So Creek Pride 23, if you could kind of rephrase your question or explain what you mean by constitutional agency, we can get that question asked, because I myself don't fully understand that. For the audience, there was a constitutional amendment for the free press passed, and it was added to the Constitution, so that's already in place. But it might have something to do with that. I don't know. Since the last can't meet the candidate video that we had put up, we've had some citizens, some at-large citizens, ask some question that they want to ask the candidates about. Are you going to advocate for or propose legislation that would expand at-large citizens' access to services? Or, like, for instance, one of the things that they proposed was a California community center, or financial assistance for citizens who want to return to the reservation?
Oh, I definitely would look into it. I want to help our citizens locally and the ones that are beyond the reservation, and things like that are something that I would advocate for.
Okay. Um, what else do you see as the major problems? I know you've worked as a financial officer for the National Council. What do you think the major issues are facing the tribe going forward?
I think the mental health, the substance abuse that I see among our people. I feel like we need a healing in our nation, and I believe in holistic healing of your mind, body, and spirit. And I believe that I will get in there and try to locate resources, do whatever I can to find ways to help our people heal. We all, as a Native communities, we suffer from generational trauma, racism, disparities among our people, and it's time for a healing. And excuse me, I believe in prayer, and however we need to lead our people back to healing, that's what we need, and I think that would help a lot of our issues.
Okay. Let's see here. Creek Pride 23 is elaborating here. You see Mvskoke College. Well, that's a statement. It's not a question. Could you rephrase that into a question there, Creek Pride? You being pretty familiar with the financial the cash flows that the nation has coming into it, where would you go to get some of those resources that we need to address those problems?
Well, I would look into our tribal funds. Like I said, federal funds have regulations and requirements tied to them.
Mm-hmm.
And with that being said, I believe we do need we need to diversify in our economic development. We can't just always depend on gaming. And
Mm-hmm.
the communities out there, we need to find out what resources they have in their communities, so that, if somebody has a pecan grove at their community, let's set something up and put our people to work, and keep that money recycled within our communities and within our tribes, support one another, support Native business, support local Creek business. I really am big on that, because you look at other ethnic groups like the Jews or the Mexicans, say, they support each other. They support one another, and they keep their money within their own community. And a lot of them are very prosperous. And I think that's what we need to do, instead of going outside these national vendors out here. We need to support each other more.
Okay. With these programs, like legislatively, how would you institute that? Because, like the executive branch would be able to do a lot of the economic development part of
Mm-hmm.
it. On the legislative side, how would you enact that process on that side?
Well, I would again, it comes back to doing research, working with my colleagues and with the executive branch. We all have to work together, of course, that. But if there's a way out there to develop these communities and to develop more economic businesses, I would do the research and fight for it.
Okay. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that's part of your platform that you want to get in while we're waiting on more questions to come in?
Well, I just want to say that I will work for the people. I'm not afraid to stand up for what's right. I'm not afraid to stand up for things that maybe aren't popular. But if it's for the good of the people, then that's what I want to do. I want to work for the people. I want to be the ears and the voice for the people. I will advocate for our youth and our elders. as far as education goes, I think there's college is not for everyone, and I would push trade schools because I know that there's going to be a shortage of plumbers, electricians, construction workers, things like that. So I would push for some of our citizens to, get a trade, learn a trade, and have a career out of that.
Okay, we've had a question pop up while we were talking. Creek Pride 23 asks, how would you, Ms. Whitecloud, really ensure that we have a media department that is truly free of political pressure?
Well, don't we have free press now?
Yes.
You mean what would I do to keep it that way?
Well, I'm just reading the question. I didn't I didn't write the question. I'm just reading it. He says, how would you, Ms. Whitecloud, really ensure that we have a media department that is truly free of political pressure?
I just would support what's already in place and not repeal it or make it go back to where it's not
Okay.
free.
Well, let me ask you this question along the lines, and this is me asking the question. Do you think that the National Council's transparency on things that are passed and executive session and that thing, do you think is adequate as it is now?
I believe in transparency. I don't have a problem with the citizens knowing.
Well, do you
The
think
business.
that the council is doing a good job as it is, or is there room for improvement?
Oh, there's always room for improvement.
Okay. So
Definitely.
what would you advocate for that needs to be done?
I well, transparent. We say transparency so much that it kind of loses its meaning. But I am very transparent. I'm very honest. I live my life with integrity, and I think the council needs to be restored with honor and respect. These leadership positions used to be respected, and I don't feel they are anymore. But that's because we have some people that don't have good character, and I would hope to try and bring that back to the council and to our leadership.
Okay. So as a legislator, how would you begin that process? What would you do to make that happen?
Try to make sure that we all are accountable and transparent to the citizens when they ask. I don't feel like we should hide anything, or not that they're hiding anything, but be as transparent as possible.
Okay, we've had a question pop up, and it's kind of along these lines that we're talking. Creek Pride 23 asks, you are a former employee of the Mvskoke Creek Nation National Council. Will you push hard for a real and enforceable code of ethics for the National Council? Do you think there are serious problems now with conduct with the National Council?
Yes, with some, and yes, I would push for a code of ethics. I know in the past some council members have requested job descriptions for the speaker, and I'm not opposed to that at all. We do need more accountability on the council.
Okay, and as far as the accountability and the enforcement, what would you support if let's say that there is a code of ethics that's put in place? What would you support as far as the teeth in that? Are we talking fines? Are we talking criminality or criminal laws, or what would you support as a legislature along those lines if the ethics are violated?
If there's fines, I feel like we should abide by that. I'm going to uphold the Constitution and the rules of procedures that the council adopts every session. There are things in there, and I feel like the speaker on down to the chairmen, they need to enforce these things, and I would advocate to enforce them.
Okay. And I guess, we asked the question earlier, but do you think that there's that framework is already in place and it's not being utilized, or is there need to be more framework? Do there need to be more guidelines, or is there already something there that's just not being done?
Well, it's been several years since I've worked there, so I don't see the current rules of procedure. But I know in the past there was sections in there for fines if the committee was unable to have a meeting because you were absent. There were fines there you were supposed to be fined, and so I don't know if that's still in there or not. But I know I find council members because I was the finance officer, and we did that a few times in the past. So, yeah, I think if it's in there, it needs to be enforced and it needs to be done.
Do you think that the situation that national council members we've seen this past year with DUIs and assault and battery and those types of charges, what's the proper response by the national council to those individual council members, in your opinion?
I think they need to be addressed. I think, as national council members, we're considered leaders, and we should live a higher standard. Not that we're better than anybody else, but you're a leader, and you should hold yourself in, your character and your actions should be above board. And if they're not, then they should be dealt with accordingly.
Okay. Creek Pride 23 asks, are you in favor of voting for candidates from your district only, or voting at large for all candidates?
Well, I think there's pros and cons to everything. If you go back to district voting, then sometimes I think a con to that is sometimes if you have one family that's popular in that district, it's hard to get them removed from council if you feel like they need to be. But on the other side, a good thing I think is that you would be held more accountable to the citizens of your district, and they would know you are supposed to answer to them. And right now there's council members that don't return phone calls or even answer their call, don't return your text. There's no communication. So they have to reach outside other districts and call other council members that will answer their calls and that will listen to them. And so I think if it's back to district, then you're going to be held responsible and accountable to those citizens in your district.
Okay.
Or they can just vote you out.
Right. Well, and I had an interesting to add a little wrinkle onto that particular question and that particular issue. And for the audience, there is legislation. I don't know if it's passed. I don't think it has yet that's going through the council right now to change everything back to district only voting. But my question to you would be, would you support legislation that would create a Creek census and establish representation based on the number of citizens in a district? Because that's one of the things one of the problems that we have now with district only voting and district representation is every district gets 2 representatives regardless of the population of that district, right? So if you have a lower population, those citizens in that district are getting more representation than a district that has a large population, if that makes sense. Kind of like how they do it, the federal government does it. They do a census and then they determine the representation by that. Would you support something like that?
Yes, I think so. I think that makes sense.
Oh, Lisa Deer's posting in the comment here. She says that bill was postponed indefinitely. All right. Well, thanks for the update there, Lisa. I appreciate it. Myself, I didn't know about that, but it is out there, and that is an issue that we're talking about. Creek Pride 23 asks, do you believe that each candidate for each office should be allowed a representative or themselves present in the election office during the whole entire ballot counting process?
Do I believe that a representative should be present?
I'm going to read back through it again. It says, do you believe that each candidate for each office should be allowed a representative or themselves present in the election office during the whole entire ballot counting process?
I don't see a problem with that. I mean, as long as there's nothing constitutionally wrong with it.
All right. Let's see. What are some other issues here? We're waiting on some questions in there. And Lisa, since you're in there, if you have any questions, go ahead and pop them in there. And anybody else, I want to remind you guys, it's open season. You can ask any questions. So I guess here's a question you could ask. The Nelson Harjo Sr. is the other representative for Okmulgee County, I believe. What is your relationship with him? Do you know him? Is he going to be a good partner for you if you were elected?
Yeah, I've known Nelson for years. I knew his wife, Yeah, I think so. I get along with Nelson, and
Do
I
you think
believe that.
ideologically you guys are on the same page, or is it going to be something where you guys may bang heads?
I don't think we'll bang heads. I think I can persuade him to vote things my way. No,
All right.
I'm kidding.
Here's something that we've had come up, and we're still working out the kinks on our end, whether we're going to be able to do it editorially. But we've had citizens request that we go to the community forums and try to record the community forums so at large citizens can see that process. But those forums are operated by those particular communities, and a lot of times they make the decision about who can come in and do anything in their forum, right? What do you advocate there? Do you think that those forums should be broadcast to all the citizens everywhere, or should those communities retain the say so over what comes out of those forums and who can attend?
Well, I mean, I think it would be helpful to be able to record them so that everyone can see them and hear all the answers. Um, but at the same time, I guess if the communities have the say so over their communities, then wouldn't want to violate that. But I see nothing wrong with having you all there to record it.
Okay. We've had a question pop up here. Eufaula MCN Monitors asks, what do you feel will be your best attribute you can bring to us as our representative?
Well, as I mentioned before, I'm having worked with the National Council and at the tribe. I'm not afraid to stand up for what's right. I'm not afraid to be the voice for the citizens. I'm not afraid to stand up against bullies, and we have them in the Creek Nation. And my motto for this campaign is I will serve the people with fearlessness, integrity, grace, honesty, and tenacity. And I think that's what we need. I'm not a part of the good old boy regime, I will fight for the people.
Okay. Let's see here. I'm trying to read if this is a question. So, is that a question there? Eufaula MCN Monitors. I see a question mark at the end, but it reads more like a statement. Rephrase that a little bit, and I'll try to get it asked. I guess at this point, too, one of the things I normally ask the candidates is, could you kind of compare and contrast yourself with the incumbent? In this case, it's Will Lowe.
Are we incumbent? Well, I don't want to compare myself, but I just want to say that I want to take this opportunity to contribute my experience, my knowledge, my skill set to advocate for our citizens. I'm not in this for the prestige, for the fame, the glory, to boost my ego. I'm in it for the people, and I will be here for the people. I will listen to the people's concerns and take that to my colleagues and try to make positive changes.
Okay. We've had a question pop up here. Lisa Deer asks, if National Council adopts a principle of conduct, would you support including representatives being required to attend, report to community meetings?
Yes. I think that if you don't attend your own community meeting, I mean, that's kind of nonsense.
Would you, if you get elected, would you propose legislation that makes that change, that requires the councilmen to do that?
Sure.
Okay. Well, that's great. We're at 24 minutes here, guys. I want to encourage you, if you have any questions, to get them in there because we're getting close to the 30-minute wrap time. I guess I'm going to assume you live in Okmulgee. You said you lived in Okmulgee for a long time, so you're not going to have to relocate or anything like that. Do you think that the at-large citizens are being served adequately, or does there need to be more done for them, and if so, what?
Well, we just got the position for that before this administration, there was at-large representative. And I'm not familiar with what that office does for the out-of-reservation citizens, but I would definitely research it and find out to see what exactly we are doing for those citizens. And if there is more that we can do, then I certainly would advocate for that and work with my colleagues in the chief's office to try and help them more.
Okay. Eufaula MCN Monitors asks, why do you think an attorney is needed for the principal's chief office? Is not the AG's office enough legal fulfillment? And I think what he's asking here is, do you agree that the principal chief office can have a separate attorney from the AG? And if I'm getting that wrong, Eufaula MCN Monitors, you let me know. But what do you think about that particular issue?
Well, I'm not really sure that I can speak for the chief's office. So I know the National Council has their own attorney as well. And in that case, I think that the National Council does need legal counsel. I'm not sure about the chief's office.
Okay. We're at 26 minutes, guys. I got time for maybe one or two more questions if you guys want to pop them in there. So let's say you, in the race that you're running in, you're going against Will Lowe and also James Jennings. Mr. Lowe and Mr. Jennings have both served as the representative, and they're going to bring a certain percentage of the vote that's people that are going to vote with them. Mm-hmm. What would you say to those citizens to sway them to switch to you?
Both of them have had their run. Both of them have had their chance. Give somebody else a chance to come in there and make a difference, make a positive difference.
Okay, great. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we wrap? I'm not seeing any more questions pop up here, or any topic that you think we should have addressed that we haven't talked about.
No, not other than I'll be loyal to the Mvskoke people, and I won't forget who voted for me. And like I said, I'm not going to be going out trying to make a name for myself on a national level. I believe there's a time and a place that Native communities need a seat at the table on national issues. But as a first-time council rep, I'm focused on home and our beyond the reservation citizens.
Okay. Well, guys, I want to give you an update on our Meet the Candidate videos we have coming up. On Thursday is Dodie Barnett. She is a candidate in Creek District. Her Meet the Candidate is at 7 p.m. So if you have questions for her, tune in then. On Friday the 18th, Lahoma Schultz. She is a candidate for the office of Principal Chief, and her Meet the Candidate is at 6 p.m. So if you have questions for Ms. Schultz, Dr. Schultz, you can pop them in there. Next week, on the 21st, Sandra Golden, who is a candidate for second chief, but she's currently a seated council member, her Meet the Candidate is at 6 p.m. And then we have Mr. James Jennings scheduled for the 23rd at 5:30 p.m. So if you want, and he is again a candidate in the Okmulgee District 2. Let's see here. There's a question that's popped up, and we got just enough time to ask it. Joseph Brown. Joseph Brown asks, if we have a problem with getting callbacks from social services, is this something we would be able to call you for answers as to why?
You can definitely call me. I can't say anything to employees as a council member, but I can definitely get with the chief's office and get with the people that are over that department and demand some better service and better quality contact.
All right. Well, I want to thank you, Ms. Whitecloud, for joining us tonight. I want to remind everybody of the schedule I mentioned earlier. And let's see, I guess I'll see you guys tomorrow at 7 p.m. Mado and Chihichat, please.
Mado to you.